Wyoming Territory, 1879. The morning sky was clear, the wind sharp, and Wyatt Zeller was already 2 days behind the fugitive bride. He stood on the edge of a ridgeline, staring down at a trail of disturbed sagebrush snaking across the dry basin below. The sheriff back in Casper had handed him a crumpled wanted poster and said the girl was more trouble than she's worth. That was before Wyatt saw the reward as some big enough to buy him a small spread and a fresh start. All he had to do was bring her back alive. Her name was Willa Garvey, 22. Escaped from her wedding 3 weeks ago, stole her husband's horse, and vanished into the western wilds. The man she left behind was some silver baron's nephew, red with anger and full of pride, insisting she be returned no matter the cost. Wyatt tugged his coat tighter and urged his mare forward, following the faint trail. He had tracked men across deserts and through blizzards. A runaway bride should have been easy. But nothing about Willa Garvey was easy. He found her 3 days later, holed up in a canyon near the foothills of the Bighorns. She had made camp with a small fire and a tin coffee pot. Her once white dress now dust-stained and torn, cinched at the waist with a thick leather belt. She held a rifle across her lap and stared into the fire like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Wyatt watched her from behind a boulder, weighing his options. She was alone, exhausted, no sign of anyone helping her. He stepped into view slowly, hands raised. "I am not here to hurt you," he said. "My name is Wyatt Zeller. Sheriff's got a bounty out on your head, but I do not take pleasure in dragging women back who do not want to go." Willa stood, rifle raised, not shaking. "You came to take me back?" "I came to see why you left." Her jaw clenched. "Why I left?" "Because he hit me. Because I said no and they married me anyway. Because nobody cared what I wanted, only what I was worth to him." "I believe you," Wyatt said, his voice low. She blinked, caught off guard. "I have seen men like that," he added. "You do not have to defend yourself to me." She lowered the rifle an inch. "Then why are you here?" "Because if I do not bring you in, someone else will. And they will not ask questions first." She stared at him for a long time. "So what then? You hogtie me and collect your coin." "No," Wyatt said. "You are not going back. Not unless you choose to. But you are going to need to learn how to fight." Willa blinked. "Fight?" He stepped closer, slow and steady. "You are not just running from a husband. You are running from a man with money and influence. He will send more men. You cannot hide forever. I have been hiding fine. You are tired, cold, and one storm away from dying out here." Her shoulders sagged, but she did not argue. Wyatt crouched near the fire. "Let me help you. I will teach you how to shoot proper, ride hard, move without leaving a trail. You can keep running, but at least know how to make it harder for them." Willa studied him. "Why would you do that?" He met her eyes. "Because no one should be hunted for choosing freedom." The silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of fire. Then slowly she nodded. "All right." Over the next week, Wyatt taught her everything he knew. She was quick, smarter than most men he had trained. She took to tracking like it was natural, learned to reload with speed, ride without spooking her horse. Her aim was shaky at first, but after 2 days she was hitting bottles from 20 feet. She never talked about the wedding, or the man she left behind. But each night, as they camped beneath the stars, Willa leaned a little closer to the fire. Closer to Wyatt. One night, she asked, "Why do you do this? Tracking, hunting people down?" Wyatt stirred the fire. "Started after the war. I had nothing but a horse and a coat. Took what jobs I could. Some brought people home. Others just brought them in." "You ever regret it?" He nodded. "Sometimes." "You?" She looked up at the stars, expression unreadable. "No, not for a second." The next morning they heard hoofbeats. Wyatt shoved Willa behind a boulder and drew his rifle. 3 riders crested the ridge, bounty men, rough-faced and armed. Hired hands, likely sent by the Silver Baron. Willa's breath caught. "What do we do?" Wyatt looked at her. "We stand and fight." She swallowed. "I have never." "You are ready." He handed her a rifle, his hand brushing hers. Her fingers trembled for a second, then tightened around the grip. They waited, crouched low, hearts pounding. The riders drew closer, unaware. When they were within range, Wyatt gave a sharp nod. The first shot rang out from Willa's rifle. It struck one man square in the shoulder, knocking him clean off his saddle. Wyatt fired next, hitting the second's horse and sending him tumbling. The third man turned and fled without a word. It was over in seconds. Willa stood, chest heaving, her face pale but steady. "I did it." Wyatt stepped beside her. "You did." She looked at him, eyes wide. "I was not scared. I thought I would be, but I was not." "You were brave," he said quietly. "You fought." She stared at him for a long, quiet moment. Then her hand reached for his, fingers curling around his palm. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently. "Come on," he said. "Let us get moving before they send more." As they packed up camp, Willa turned to him. "Wyatt." "Yeah?" "When this is over. When it is safe again. What will you do?" He hesitated. "I do not know. Maybe find some land. Start over." She nodded. "That sounds good." Then she smiled. Small and warm, the first real smile he had seen from her. "Maybe I will come with you." They crossed into the foothills of the Owl Creek Mountains by early evening, keeping to mule paths and dry washes where their tracks wouldn't hold. The light turned amber across the ridgelines, and the wind carried the faint scent of pine and something older rock, warmed all day and cooling down. Willa rode just behind Wyatt, her rifle snug across her saddle horn, her posture no longer stiff with fear but shaped by alertness. They didn't speak until they made camp near a spring-fed creek, where cottonwoods leaned close and the water ran clear over river stones. Wyatt set about building a fire while Willa gathered kindling, her steps careful among the underbrush. When she returned, she crouched beside him and handed over a bundle of dry pine slivers, her eyes flicking to the flint in his hand. "You ever trap before?" she asked. "I have," he said, striking the steel. "Why?" "Because we passed prints. Rabbit, maybe vole. Could set some loops tonight. Might not get much, but better than jerky again." Wyatt glanced at her, then gave a quiet nod. "You catch, I'll dress it." They worked without fuss. Willa set the traps downstream, and Wyatt cleaned the coffee pot with sand from the riverbed. When they sat to eat, she pulled her knees up and rested her chin atop them, staring into the coals. "North," she said after a while. "That's the way I've been thinking." Wyatt didn't answer right away. He listened to the creak and the pop of pitchwood. "Too close to the rail lines," he said finally. "Too many eyes. You want to vanish, you need to think smaller. Remote." She turned toward him slightly. "You know where? West of Wind River. High country. Not much out there but old trails and game. A woman could disappear if she knew how to keep a fire low. I don't want to disappear forever." He looked at her, then really looked, and saw the weight behind her words. Not just survival. Not just escape. She wanted a life that didn't have to be hidden. "I suppose you want more than just a rifle and a pack horse," he said. "I want to plant something and see it come up. I want to hear my name without flinching." Wyatt reached for a stick and poked at the embers. "What was it like before?" She was quiet a long time. "My ma died when I was little. My father was a blacksmith. Made wagon wheels, horseshoes, hinges. He never taught me much of the trade, but I watched. After he passed, the town decided I needed marrying. I thought I had a voice in the matter." Her voice didn't hitch, but it changed, flattened like the edge of a whetstone. "Turns out I didn't." Wyatt didn't press. He handed her a tin of coffee instead. "You ever been married?" she asked, wrapping her hands around the warmth. He shook his head once. "Came close. Before the war. She waited a year, then sent word she'd taken up with a storekeeper in St. Louis. I don't blame her. Do you ever think about it still?" "No," he said. Then, after a moment, "Not until now." She glanced at him but didn't press either. That night, they didn't sleep right away. The fire burned low, and the stars wheeled slow above them. Willa lay on her side, blanket pulled to her chin, watching Wyatt as he leaned back on his elbows, hat tilted down over his brow. "How long do you think before they come again?" she asked softly. Could be days. Could be hours. Depends how fast that last one rode. I don't want to keep running. He didn't move. Then we stop. And do what? We build something. High and quiet. With good water and rock walls strong enough to hold through winter. She rolled to her back, staring up. You'd stay? If you asked. Silence stretched again. I'd ask, she said. He turned his head to look at her. Her eyes were open, catching starlight. A breeze stirred the grass. Somewhere nearby, an owl called once, then went quiet again. What do you want out of that place? He asked. She hesitated. A room with a door I can close. A table that seats two. A garden. Maybe a goat. Wyatt gave a soft huff of breath. That all? I'd like to laugh without thinking someone's listening. She didn't say the rest. She didn't have to. By morning, the snares had caught a lean rabbit. Wyatt cleaned it while Willa boiled water and found wild onion growing near the creek. They ate quietly, then packed their gear and moved on, heading west into country neither of them had ever walked. The path was rough and the heat climbed early, but neither complained. By mid-afternoon, they crested a rise and spotted a narrow valley below, where aspens grew dense along the edge of a slow-moving stream. A broken fence line marked an old homestead, long abandoned. The roof caved in, but the stone chimney still standing. Willa drew her horse up beside Wyatt's and stared down. That it? She asked. It could be. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased. They rode down together. The cabin had no door left. Snowmelt had warped the floorboards and a squirrel nest spilled from the rafters, but the walls still stood and that was enough. Wyatt stepped inside first, testing the planks with his boot. Foundation's holding, he said. We clear this out, patch the roof, it'll stand another winter. Willa moved past him, eyes scanning the space. We'll need stone for the hearth. There's cracks all through the base. I saw a rock slide back east of the ridge. We can haul from there. She nodded, already rolling up her sleeves. Then let's start. They worked without pause until the sun dropped below the edge of the trees. Wyatt pried loose the broken shutters while Willa dragged beams from the fallen lean-to. Dust clung to their skin, and when a bat dropped from the rafters, she startled but didn't flinch. They laughed once brief, unguarded when Wyatt misjudged a beam and tumbled backward into a pile of old hay. That night, they ate by the stream, sitting on a flat rock with their boots off and their sleeves damp from washing. Willa dipped her bare feet into the water, the cool current lapping her ankles. You ever think about what you'd be doing if you'd stayed east? She asked, watching the sky pale toward dusk. Wyatt pulled a blade of grass between his fingers. I'd probably be fixing fence for some cattle outfit. Sleeping in a bunkhouse. Nothing permanent. No family waiting? None left, he said. You. She shook her head. My aunt wrote once. Said I could come live in Indiana with her. But I think she only offered because she thought it was expected. You don't want to go? I don't belong to anyone else anymore. I don't want to be someone's pity project. Her voice was calm, not bitter. A quiet fact settled in her chest. I've seen people build lives from less, he said. She looked at him. You think this counts as building? He nodded once. Stone by stone. In the mornings, they rose before light. Wyatt taught her how to cut timber with a two-man saw, and she showed him how to set a brace for the ridge beam using split saplings. They worked side by side without waste, each knowing what the other would reach for, when to brace, when to rest. When rain came, they tarped the roof with oilcloth and worked beneath it, the sound of drops steady like a drum on canvas. Willa hummed once, low in her throat, as she sanded a plank for the new door. Wyatt paused his work to listen, but didn't interrupt. Later, as the storm eased and dusk settled in, she brought him a tin of boiled nettles and wild potato they dug that afternoon. You always this quiet? She asked as she handed it over. He looked up at her. I talk when there's something worth saying. She sat beside him under the tarp. And this isn't? He took a long sip. Feels like enough, just being here. She leaned back on her elbows. Funny. I used to think being alone meant safety. But this is different. He glanced at her, catching the way her hair clung to her neck, damp with rain. How so? I'm not waiting for the world to fall apart. It won't, he said. Not here. Because of you? He looked toward the trees where the clouds were breaking. Because you fought to get here. When the cabin stood again with a new roof line, a mended hearth, and a door that shut snug into its frame, they built a pen for the goats she'd gone silent about but never stopped watching the hills for. He carved a notch into the doorframe on the day they finished the roof. She didn't ask why, and he didn't say. That evening, after the last shingles were laid, Willa took a tin of tea outside and sat on the porch step. Wyatt joined her, his shoulders lined with ache but his face relaxed in the quiet. "Do you miss moving?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, you ever think about leaving again?" He turned toward her, meeting her gaze. "I won't." She didn't look away. "You sure?" "I am." She set her tin down. "Then I think I'm ready." "For what?" "Not running. Not hiding. Just living." He reached across and took her hand, fingers settling between hers like they'd done it 1,000 times. No declaration passed between them. No promise spoken aloud. Just the steady joining of two people who had already chosen. The sun dipped low, painting the edge of the pines in rose and gold. Inside the cabin, the fire they'd built together flickered in the stone hearth, casting long shadows across the floor they'd laid by hand. And for the first time, Willa didn't feel like she was trying to disappear. She felt found. The first snow came early, sifting down over the high valley in the night. By morning, the stream had stiffened along its edges, and a breath hung white in the air. Willa stepped out onto the porch wrapped in Wyatt's old wool coat, her boots crunching frost as she crossed to the pen. The goat bleated once, already restless. She poured grain into the trough and rubbed warmth into its ears with one bare hand. Inside, the fire crackled low and Wyatt crouched near it, fitting a wedge beneath the stove leg to level it. When Willa came back in, she shut the door with her shoulder and knelt to unfold the canvas bag she'd stitched from feed sackcloth. Inside were a dozen strips of dried meat and a jar sealed tight with beeswax. "Which neighbor gave you this?" Wyatt asked, eyeing the jar. "Met a woman downriver about an hour east. Widow named Mrs. Baird. Said her boy used to trap game up here before the fever took him." "She give it to you free?" "No," Willa said. "I traded her a pair of mittens and some dried berries. She said I looked like someone who'd make use of the meat." Wyatt nodded and straightened. "You get her name?" "Sarah," she said. "And she's alone. I told her she could come by if the snow got bad." "You think she will?" "I think she's spent enough winters pacing her own floorboards." He took the jar and set it gently on the shelf above the hearth. "I'll split more wood. I already filled the stack," she said, peeling off the coat. "Used that dead pine by the ridge. Took the better part of yesterday." Wyatt glanced over his shoulder. "You carried all that yourself?" "I used the sled," she said. "I'm not trying to impress you." "You did anyway." She gave him a look, half amused, and hung the coat on the peg beside the door. Wyatt crossed to the window and wiped a circle in the fogged glass. "We'll need to ride into town by month's end. You'll need salt, flour, maybe another lamp wick." She leaned on the back of the chair. "And you'll need bullets." He turned. "You keeping count?" "You only took 3 rounds from the last box," she said. "That left you with 9. He blinked. "You've been checking my ammunition?" "I don't plan on being caught short again," she said. "And you taught me to watch everything." He stepped closer. "You've watched more than you let on. I notice what matters." His hand brushed hers where it rested on the chair. She didn't draw back. "You ever think about what you want to do when the cabin's finished?" she asked. He looked at her, brow furrowed. "It is finished." "No," she said. "The walls are done. The roof holds. But we're not finished." She stepped past him to the shelf, pulling down a square of folded cloth. She laid it on the table and unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a length of embroidery, faded blue thread worked into the shape of a sprouting branch. It was uneven, the stitches shy in some places, bold in others. "I made this when I thought I'd be a wife in a house I didn't choose," she said. "But I kept it." Not for him. Just to prove to myself I could start something. He studied the cloth, then her face. You want to hang it? No, she said. I want to finish it. But not alone. She reached into the cupboard, pulled out a tin of thread and 2 needles. She set them side by side and looked up at him. You know how? No, Wyatt said. But I can learn. They sat by the fire, shoulders brushing, bent over the cloth. Her hands moved with quiet certainty. His fumbled at first, but he didn't quit. The thread slipped through the linen slow and steady, and the branch grew inch by inch under both their hands. When the fire burned low, she laid the cloth aside and turned to him. You going to stay through spring? She asked. I thought I already had. She tilted her head, searching him. Then I want you to have something. She stood, crossed to the shelf, and pulled down a folded bundle wrapped in gray wool. She held it out. He unfolded it slowly. Inside was a shirt, hand-stitched, dyed with walnut hulls to a deep brown. The seams were strong, the collar neat. I made it from the cloth I traded with Mrs. Baird. I measured it against your coat. Wyatt looked at the shirt, then at her. Why? Because I wanted to give you something that took time. He touched the fabric, the line of stitches at the cuff. You think this means we're settled? She met his gaze. I think we stopped running. That's enough. He stepped forward, folding the shirt and setting it aside. Then he took her face in both hands, his thumbs grazing her cheekbones as if measuring the distance between every mile they traveled. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. His kiss was slow, grounded. Nothing hurried, nothing uncertain. When it ended, she leaned into his chest, her voice low. Say we do go to town next month. What do I call you when someone asks? He wrapped his arms around her, warm and solid. Whatever name you want. But if it's all the same to you, I'd like it to be yours. She closed her eyes and smiled against his shoulder. I think I can live with that. The ride into Riverton took most of a day. The road packed tight with old snow and rutted from wagons that passed before the last freeze. Willa kept the reins light in her hands, her mare steady beside Wyatt's gelding. Their breath fogged in front of them, and the only sound for a while was the creak of saddle leather and the soft crunch of hooves. Neither of them had said much since leaving the cabin. Not out of tension, just the quiet that came with knowing what waited ahead and not rushing toward it. The town was small, pressed up against the river bend, with a general store, a smithy, 2 saloons, and a church that leaned slightly to one side. As they rode in, a group of boys paused their game near the livery, watching the pair with open curiosity. Willa met their stares with calm ease, her hat low, her coat buttoned to the throat. Wyatt dismounted first, tying off both horses before turning toward her. You want to split up? He asked. We'll be quicker that way. She shook her head once. I'd rather stay close. They stepped into the general store together, the bell above the door giving a tired jangle. The scent of kerosene, flour, and leather hung in the still air. A man behind the counter leaned back on a stool, boots crossed, a ledger open on his lap. Afternoon, he said, setting the book aside. Looking for supplies? Wyatt nodded. Salt, lamp oil, flour, and a half-bolt of muslin if you've got it. Willa added, and 2 spools of strong thread. The kind that doesn't snap in frost. The storekeeper squinted at her. You doing your own sewing? Yes, she said. Been doing it long enough I know it lasts. He shrugged and moved toward the back, calling out prices as he went. Willa browsed the shelves while Wyatt handled the counting. She paused near a small stack of books, thumbing the corner of one with a green canvas cover. It was a ledger and used. Could we get that too? She asked when the man returned. He raised an eyebrow. Writing a journal? Keeping track, she said, of what we've planted. Days of snow. When the goats start kidding. Wyatt glanced at her as he handed over the coins. You thinking ahead now? I am, she said. Feels good. They loaded the supplies into the packs without hurry, tying the bundles down tight. Willa adjusted the saddle cinch, her fingers quick and practiced. "You hungry?" Wyatt asked, pulling on his gloves. "There's a hand pie stand near the smithy. Meat and onion, if memory serves." "I could eat," she said. "And I want to look at the trade board after." He nodded. "Still thinking about that spinning wheel? If we're going to keep goats, we'll have fleece come spring. No sense letting it go to waste." They found the food stand tucked between two buildings, a woman tending a coal stove behind a worn counter. Willa ate standing, her back to the wind, eyes scanning the street without urgency. A man passed by, glancing too long in her direction. He was young, maybe late 20s, dressed finer than most, with polished boots and a silk cravat tucked under his collar. He didn't speak, just looked, then turned away when Wyatt stepped forward and stood beside her. "You recognize him?" Wyatt asked quietly. "No," she said, "but I saw the way he looked at my hand. Like he expected a ring." "You want one?" Willa set down the last of her crust. "Not for his sake." He studied her face. "But for yours." She met his gaze. "I wouldn't mind." They didn't speak of it the rest of the day, but as they rode out of town with supplies packed and the sun setting behind them, the thought stayed between them, warm and steady. Back at the cabin, the air inside was still and cold, but the hearth took quickly, and within the hour, the room glowed again. Willa unpacked the ledger first, setting it on the small shelf Wyatt had built from scrap pine. Then the muslin, the salt, the thread, all placed with care, as though each item marked a corner of the life they'd chosen. Later, he brought a small tin box from beneath the floorboards. It was dented on one side, the latch rusted, but it opened easily. Inside was a ring, simple silver, worn smooth. "I bought it a long time ago," he said. "Didn't know if I'd ever use it." She took it carefully, turning it in her fingers. "Who was it for?" "No one anymore." She held it out. "Then put it on me." He took her hand and slid it on. "It fit." "I won't ever leave this place," she said. "I won't ever make you," he said. They stood in the quiet, the fire casting light across their faces, the wind pressing soft against the windows. Outside, snow whispered down again, slow and light. In the spring, they cleared a wide patch near the edge of the stream. Willa planted carrots, parsnips, beans, and a row of wildflower seeds a neighbor had traded her in exchange for help delivering a calf. Wyatt built a beehive box from scrap pine and watched the blossoms for signs of life. By midsummer, the goats kidded 2 healthy does and 1 small buck. Willa named them after trees. They hosted Sarah Baird more than once. She came with her knitting, and they shared dried apples and laughter, the kind that came easy with no one watching. Wyatt fixed her wagon wheel when it cracked, and Willa helped her stitch a new bodice. When Sarah left, she hugged them both and said she'd tell others the High Valley had room for good-hearted folks. Willa kept the ledger neat, marking each frost, each birth, each bloom. Her handwriting grew bolder as the pages filled. Wyatt added notes in the margins, weather signs, coyote tracks, the number of nails left in the tin. They never spoke of the man who had once claimed her. He never came, and after a while, even the thought of him lost its shape. Years passed slow and good. The fence held through storms. The orchard grew. Laughter echoed often within the walls they'd rebuilt. And every night, they slept with fingers twined, the fire banked low, the cabin warm and whole. In the end, there was nothing grand about their life, just the peace of hands that knew each other, the quiet of a home made by choice, the kind of love that didn't need to be spoken to be known.